Hey, everybody, I'm John Granato. That's Lance Zierlein. You can hear us mornings on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet so that you get all of our content here on SportsMap HOU. Hey, Lance, following the draft, you know about that draft. The Texans made two significant moves. They picked up the fifth-year option on Titus Howard, and they traded Lonnie Johnson, both guys from the 2019 draft, Howard being only one of two guys left from that draft. That Bill O'Brien was historically awesome as a GM. But in hindsight, was O'Brien right that Caserio was the better option over Brian Gaine?
Maybe. I mean, he didn't really get much of a chance. He had one draft, so hard to say. I think you can look at Brian Gaine and say Brian Gaine had, it was Brian Gaine's first time being a GM in a position like that. So I don't think you can judge him based on one draft. I think it is fair to say that draft was a disappointing draft, though. Max Sharping didn't turn out to be the player you thought. At the time, I felt like Lonnie Johnson was overdrafted. You can go back and read my old draft profiles on that. He was a high-weight speed guy, so, I understood it. Kahale Warring, they just had a fundamental lack of background work that they did on him because he had some issues learning the playbook and things like that, and he was hurt. He never even was a factor at all for the Texans. So Warring was a wasted pick in the third. Max Sharping never did anything. Lonnie Johnson was a disappointment. And Titus Howard, frankly, I mean, this is a make or break year for him. I understand they pick up the fifth-year option, but, man, Titus Howard's got to play a whole lot better. And if he does, you're in good shape because you got Kenyon Green. You'll have Titus Howard potentially as your next left tackle. If not, maybe you stick with it at Laramie Tunsil at left tackle and Titus Howard develops into a consistent right tackle and you have Kenyon Green then at guard. You're cooking a little bit here. A.J. Cann they've got as a free agent that they added who's okay. You look to add a center at some point, in free agency or the draft next year, and you've got yourself something. But that's only if Titus Howard comes around. And when you look back at the totality of that draft, it was disappointing. And I was somebody who really believes and still believes that Brian Gaine should have been given longer. You don't judge general managers based on one single draft. Chris Ballard had what I thought was a disappointing draft, his first draft. Next year, he came back and drafted two All-Pros, Quentin Nelson and Darius Leonard. And he followed that up 2 years later after that with an All-Pro and Jonathan Taylor. So you got to give guys a chance to draft for a while. But I think it is okay now to look at the 19 draft and say, disappointing draft for the Texans.
Oh, man. Well, it was Bill O'Brien had his hand in it. Anything Bill O'Brien had his hand in.
Yeah, he did.
And when I said, he was awesome, I meant awful. But Rick Smith drafted some really good first-rounders. I mean, some historically good first-rounders. Mm-hmm. What's the bar for Nick Caserio to be – well, now we talk about Rick Smith's first-rounders. His second through seventh-rounders were not very good. So what's the bar here for Nick Caserio to overtake Rick Smith?
Well, it is a tale of two cities for Rick Smith. There is some absolutely below average round 2 through round 5 drafts without question. And there's some outstanding round 1 picks.
Yep.
So, J.J. Watt, incredible, was a defensive player of the year. DeAndre Hopkins at one time was considered, maybe the preeminent wide receiver in all of football. Deshaun Watson, that was a move that Rick Smith made. It was not a Bill O'Brien move. It was a Rick Smith move. So Rick Smith is responsible for a lot of really good picks as well. So to be judged against Rick Smith, I mean, at some point you're going to have some big hits on some first-rounders. I think what pushes you past them is just being an average drafter on day 2. In the second and third round, if you're just an average drafter, you'll be better than what Rick Smith was on day 2. But Rick Smith hit some major home runs in the first round, and that ended up being the basis for a team that was of a highly competitive team that ended up winning, division titles. So I think if you're looking at the bar Rick Smith set, John, I would think that the first thing you have to do is get some really good first-round picks.
Yep.
Hit some big home runs with first-round picks. But after that, just being average on day 2 and rounds 2 through 4 even should help push Nick Caserio past.
Well, Caserio might get pushed past him if his quarterback ends up a third rounder that ends up being a quarterback here for any amount of time, right? I mean, he didn't even have a first and second round pick, and he's got guys that are on the field. Rick Smith, there were some guys that didn't even make the team. It was just terrible, some of the guys that Rick Smith drafted after the first round. So already Nick Caserio, I think, is got a bit of a leg up, even in the later rounds to what Rick Smith did. So I'm with you. Now, you're going to get a J.J. Watt. You're going to get a Deshaun Watson. Are you going to get some of the guys? Kareem. I mean, he did a hell of a job. In that first round. So that's going to be a much higher bar. But you're right. After that, not so high.